Imagine for a second that you have a 150-year-old grandfather.
Okay.
He is steady, reliable, maybe a little set in his ways. But then one morning you wake up to find he's not just out sprinting Olympic athletes on the track.
Right.
He is like actively building a cutthroat tech empire in your garage.
Which is a pretty terrifying thought, honestly.
It is. That jarring, almost impossible shift in reality. That is exactly what is happening right now in the pharmaceutical world. Welcome to the deep dive. We have a massive stack of financial analysis in front of us today.
Yeah, we do.
Specifically, this is a mid-March 2026 deep dive report on Eli Lilly, and our mission is to unpack all of it for you.
It really is a fascinating corporate transformation. You look at these sources, and they paint this vivid picture of a company that has, fundamentally changed its DNA over the last couple of years.
Exactly. And we've tailored this deep dive specifically for you because we know you want the high-value insights without getting bogged down in the endless, mind-numbing spreadsheets.
Nobody wants to read those.
Right. So the core theme we're going to explore today is this. Eli Lilly is no longer just a traditional century-and-a-half-old diabetes company.
Right.
The markets, the competitors, the government, everyone is actively pricing and treating them like a Silicon Valley big tech monopoly.
Which is just a complete paradigm shift for a pharmaceutical business.
Yeah.
They are playing a completely different game now.
It's massive. So here's our roadmap. We are going to figure out how they achieved that historic $1 trillion valuation and how their metabolic drugs are sustaining that weight.
Yeah, the twin engines.
Right. Then we're going to debate this mind-bending $50 pricing strategy that is currently suffocating their rivals. After that, we need to look at the next frontier. You know how they are replacing needles with pills and hunting down knockoffs like a tech platform protecting its code.
It's ruthless.
It really is. And finally, we will look at what happens when the patents expire and how they are ruthlessly preparing for the future.
It is a wild journey, honestly. From pure scientific breakthrough to absolute unapologetic corporate dominance.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the sheer scale of Eli Lilly's current dominance, just to understand why Wall Street is treating them like they just invented the iPhone.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering.
In late 2025, Eli Lilly became the first pharmaceutical company in history to cross the $1 trillion market cap threshold. Their Q4 2025 revenue hit $19.29 billion.
Wow.
I know, right? That is a 43% year-over-year increase from Q4 2024.
That kind of growth defies gravity for a company that size. It just shouldn't happen.
A mega-cap company growing revenue at 43% year-over-year is it's like trying to maneuver a massive cargo ship like a jet ski. How is this demand physically sustaining itself?
Well, you really have to look at the twin engines driving it, right?
Yeah, Mounjaro and Zepbound. These two drugs, which are both based on the molecule tirzepatide, pulled in over $36.5 billion in 2025. That is 56% of the entire company's revenue.
Just unbelievable concentration.
And tirzepatide officially dethroned Merck's Keytruda and Novo Nordisk's Ozempic and Wegovy as the best-selling drug in the world. Plus, they have a staggering 97.85% return on equity. How does a pharmaceutical cargo ship pull off jet ski maneuvers?
To understand that, we need to look at what that return on equity actually means. Return on equity, or ROE, it basically measures how efficiently a company turns shareholder money into profit.
Right.
And, a healthy legacy pharmaceutical company is usually thrilled with like a 15% ROE.
Okay.
So Lilly hitting nearly 98%. That means they're essentially turning almost every single dollar invested by shareholders directly into pure profit at software company speeds.
But how are they doing that with a physical drug?
They're doing that through a strategy called indication expansion. You have to look beyond just weight loss here. Recently, Zepbound was approved by the FDA for treating obstructive sleep apnea, or OSA, in adults with obesity.
Which, that sounds like a nice bonus feature, but why is that a game changer for their revenue?
Because it completely flips the drug status in the eyes of insurance companies. Historically, a lot of insurers pushed back hard on covering these GLP-1 and GIP drugs.
Oh, because they didn't want to pay for them.
Exactly. They actively categorized them as cosmetic weight loss treatments to avoid footing the bill. But the moment the FDA says this specific drug treats sleep apnea, which is a condition that can lead to severe cardiovascular issues, strokes, and massive hospital bills, well, the entire narrative changes.
It goes from a lifestyle drug to a life-saving medical necessity.
Bingo.
Oh, wow. It blows the doors off the insurance coverage limitations. They are basically forcing the insurer's hands.
They absolutely are. It unlocks coverage for millions of patients who previously, couldn't get their insurance to pay a dime. The consumer demand was already there, but this indication expansion removes the financial friction.
That is how you keep a trillion-dollar engine running.
Right. You don't just find new patients, you find brilliant new ways to make the massive healthcare system pay for the patients you already have.
Which brings up a really important point about how they are protecting this massive demand. Because usually, when a drug company makes this much money, the government steps in.
Oh yeah, the regulatory crosshairs always find the biggest target.
But instead of fighting government price controls, Eli Lilly seemingly weaponized them. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, lay it out.
So, under the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, Medicare now has the power to legally negotiate drug prices.
Right.
For example, Lilly's diabetes drug Jardiance is facing steep price cuts in 2026.
Right.
And Novo Nordisk's Ozempic is up for cuts in 2027. So, the threat of government intervention choking their profits is very real.
It is arguably the single biggest systemic risk to their entire revenue model.
But instead of playing the victim and suing the government, Lilly strikes a historic deal. They worked with the former Trump administration to voluntarily cap out-of-pocket costs for Zepbound at just $50 a month for Medicare patients starting in April 2026.
Which is a huge drop.
It's huge. This opens up access to 40 million Americans. Now, on paper, this looks like financial suicide, right? Dropping the price from over $1,000 a month to $50.
Yeah, you'd think the market would panic.
But Lilly's stock jumped 10% on the news. Meanwhile, their main rival, Novo Nordisk, shocked the market by forecasting a 5 to 13% shrinkage in their 2026 revenue. That's their first drop since 2014.
Wow.
They are pulling in Amazon. They're voluntarily slashing their unit margin to capture a massive volume of users.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it.
Oh.
It is a masterclass in the economic concept of price elasticity of demand.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, yes, they're losing a massive amount of profit margin on each individual pen they sell to a Medicare patient.
Yeah.
But by dropping the price to $50, the sheer volume of new patients flooding into the system more than makes up for that lost margin per unit.
Let me push back on that for a second, though. Capping the price at $50 to capture 40 million Americans sounds great for a software company, right? Right. Copying lines of code is basically free.
Sure.
But these are physical, highly complex biologic injection pens. Doesn't scaling up to 40 million physical units at a drastically reduced margin completely blow up their manufacturing costs? Like, how do they not bleed cash on the logistics alone?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, and it's exactly why this move is so aggressive. Lilly already spent the last few years pouring billions into building out their global manufacturing infrastructure.
Oh, I see.
Their factories are already up and running at scale, so their marginal cost to produce one extra pen is actually incredibly low now. The genius of this $50 cap isn't just about capturing revenue, it's a defensive weapon.
Yeah.
By setting the price ceiling at $50, Lilly has created an impenetrable economic moat.
Because nobody else can afford to play at that price point.
Precisely. Think about their competitors. You have smaller, agile companies like Viking Therapeutics, and you have giants like Novo Nordisk. Neither of them can easily afford to build the multi-billion-dollar, highly complex manufacturing facilities required to produce these drugs at a massive scale, only to be forced to sell them at a $50 price point just to compete.
So Lilly can survive on the tiny margin because their factory is already paid for, but anyone else trying to enter the market would just bleed to death before they ever sold their first million pens.
Exactly. It is a scorched earth pricing strategy. They gladly traded their per-unit margin for a complete market monopoly. They are starving the competition of the profit margins they need to survive.
So Lilly has built this massive pricing moat. They're choking out the competition. But, a pricing moat only works if you are selling the best product.
Right, you still need the science.
What happens when a competitor invents a drug that is just fundamentally better? You can't price cut your way out of obsolescence. Let's talk about the next frontier. The scientific moats, the push for pills, and the war on pirates.
The pirates being the compounding pharmacies, of course.
Yeah, but let's start with the scientific threat first. We mentioned Viking Therapeutics earlier. They have a drug in the pipeline right now, VK2735, showing a 12.2% weight loss.
Which is very solid data.
That is impressive, but what really caught my eye in these sources is the delivery mechanism. It has the potential to be a once-monthly injection.
Oh, that's huge.
That is a massive threat to Zepbound, which requires a weekly injection. I mean, people generally hate needles. Stabbing yourself once a month sounds infinitely better than doing it every single week.
It is a profound convenience advantage.
Hmm.
In the pharmaceutical world, patient compliance,
Mm.
getting people to actually take their medicine is half the battle. A monthly shot solves a lot of compliance issues.
But Lilly's countermove is wild. They aren't trying to make a monthly shot. They are leapfrogging the injection entirely and going straight to a daily pill.
Yeah, or for Glypram.
Right. Our sources note it is a non-peptide oral pill that showed a 12.4% weight loss at 72 weeks. And that's compared to just 0.9% for the placebo.
The efficacy is incredible for a pill.
And this isn't some far-off, 10 years down the road dream. It has an FDA approval date, a PDUFA date set for April 10th, 2026. Financial analysts expect it to generate $2 to $3 billion almost immediately upon launch.
Which is just staggering scale.
And Lilly is already spending $3 billion on manufacturing facilities in China just to produce it.
Well, the science behind that pill is what makes it a genuine marvel. Notice how the sources specifically call it a non-peptide oral pill.
I saw that, yeah, but why does non-peptide matter? Like, what does that actually mean for the patient?
So, peptides are essentially tiny proteins. The problem with current weight loss drugs, like Zepbound, is that they're made of peptides. If you try to swallow a biologic peptide in a pill, your stomach acid treats it just like a piece of steak.
Oh, it just digests it.
Exactly. It breaks it down and digests it before the active ingredients could ever reach your bloodstream. That is why they have to be injected directly into the fat tissue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So making a non-peptide version means Lilly engineered a synthetic molecule that survives the brutal environment of the human stomach, enters the bloodstream, and still activates the exact same weight loss receptors in the brain.
That is incredible, and I assume that also explains the massive manufacturing investment in China.
It does, and it ties into a logistical nightmare called the cold chain. Currently, those peptide injection pens have to be kept refrigerated from the exact moment they leave the factory floor until they reach your home refrigerator.
Because they degrade.
Right. Yes, they degrade at room temperature. Maintaining a global chain of refrigerated trucks, planes, and warehouses is incredibly expensive. And it makes it nearly impossible to sell these drugs in lower to middle income countries that lack that infrastructure.
But a stable non-peptide oral pill.
You put it in a plastic bottle, throw it on a regular cargo ship, and it sits safely on a pharmacy shelf for months. It completely bypasses the cold chain and unlocks the entire global market.
So they beat the monthly injection by just giving you a normal pill you take with your morning coffee. That completely neutralizes the Viking threat.
It really does.
But we also need to talk about the pirates, the compounding pharmacies, because this is where Lilly's tech-like ruthlessness really shines.
The gray market for these drugs has been a fascinating subplot over the last 2 years.
So just to set the stage for you listening, during the recent massive drug shortages, the FDA allowed compounding pharmacies, telehealth clinics, and local medical spas to legally produce and sell cheap knockoffs of tirzepatide.
Right, as a stopgap measure.
Exactly. People were getting their weight loss drugs for maybe $200 a month instead of $1,000. But as the official shortage ended, these pharmacies tried to keep the gravy train rolling by utilizing a legal loophole.
Yeah, the custom formulations.
Right. They started claiming they were making personalized formulas by mixing raw tirzepatide with vitamin B12.
It is a classic tactic to avoid patent infringement while keeping the profit margins flowing.
But Lilly didn't just send out a bunch of angry cease and desist letters. They went on the scientific offensive. In March 2026, they released their own highly detailed analytical test showing that these compounded drugs mixed with vitamin B12 contained, and I quote, significant levels of an impurity. But I have to ask about the mechanics of this. How does a massive corporation even go about proving that? Are they, like, sending secret shoppers into local Botox clinics to buy these knockoffs and run them through mass spectrometers back at headquarters?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
They use their vast resources to acquire samples from across the gray market and run them through rigorous laboratory testing.
Wow.
But this raises an important question about corporate leverage and their hidden motives. Yes, patient safety is the loud public justification. Mixing complex synthetic molecules with vitamins in a loosely regulated compounding pharmacy can absolutely create unknown, potentially toxic impurities.
But strategically, it serves a much bigger purpose for Lilly.
It is a brilliant, ruthless legal tactic. By producing hard, irrefutable scientific evidence of impurities, Lilly basically forces the FDA's hand.
Oh, I see.
The FDA cannot ignore peer-reviewed or highly analytical data showing that a widely distributed compounded drug is potentially dangerous to the public. It compels the federal regulatory agency to aggressively crack down on these telehealth clinics and medical spas.
So Lilly doesn't have to spend years in court suing thousands of individual spas. They just hand the scientific hammer to the FDA and let the government do the dirty work.
But when those cheap gray market options are abruptly shut down by federal regulators, where do all those thousands of patients have to go?
Right back into the official Eli Lilly ecosystem. They either pay up or they stop losing weight.
Exactly. They are using their massive research and development budget not just to invent new drugs, but to forensically dismantle their unofficial competitors.
It really is like a tech giant crushing third-party developers who try to hack their platform. Apple doesn't sue every person who jailbreaks an iPhone. They just release a software update that bricks the phone. It is all about maintaining absolute control of the ecosystem.
And maintaining that tight control is going to be absolutely vital for them because of the massive financial threat looming on the horizon.
Which brings us to our final segment, handling the patent cliff and their ruthless approach to capital allocation. Because every textile monopoly eventually faces the reality that their core patents expire.
It's inevitable.
By 2031, Lilly is going to hit a major patent cliff. Some of their foundational oncology and immunology blockbusters, like Verzenio for breast cancer and Taltz, will officially lose their patent protection. That opens the door for cheap generics to flood the market and potentially wipe out billions of dollars in annual revenue.
The patent cliff is the existential dread of every major pharmaceutical company. It is a ticking clock.
So to prepare for 2031, they are aggressively diversifying beyond weight loss and diabetes. The big play highlighted in our sources is Alzheimer's disease, with a drug called Kisunla or donanemab.
Right.
Now, the sources note that adoption for this drug is a bit of a slow burn right now, and frankly, looking at the logistics, I can see why.
The friction for Alzheimer's treatments is incredibly high.
Right, because unlike a weight loss drug where a doctor just looks at your BMI on a scale to see if you qualify, diagnosing Alzheimer's for Kisunla requires complex, expensive procedures.
Yeah, the diagnostics are tough.
You need specialized PT scans or spinal taps just to confirm the presence of amyloid plaques in the brain before you can even prescribe the drug. The healthcare infrastructure just isn't built to process millions of people through PT scanners quickly.
The bottleneck is severe.
Yeah.
The healthcare system is still adapting to the diagnostic requirements. But despite that slow start, financial analysts highlight Kisunla as a massive future pillar for the company. The science works, and as the diagnostic infrastructure catches up, the revenue will follow.
But here's the part of their future strategy that really fascinated me. We talked about how they operate like a big tech company regarding pricing and platforms. Well, they're also deeply unsentimental about capital allocation, just like Silicon Valley.
Oh, absolutely.
In February 2026, Lilly abruptly killed 3 different pipeline drugs. One of them was a $1 billion gene therapy for dementia that they had previously acquired from a company called Prevail Therapeutics. They just axed it.
Cut it completely.
No safety issues, no massive public failures. The clinical data just wasn't strong enough to justify the ongoing research and development costs.
That is a remarkably difficult thing for a corporate board to do. I mean, the sunk cost fallacy usually keeps these projects alive for years. Cutting your losses on a billion-dollar acquisition requires incredible financial discipline.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If we pull all the way back and look at the whole board, Lilly's 2026 guidance expects them to pull in between $80 to $83 billion in total revenue.
Huge numbers.
And they are hitting those staggering numbers because they are aggressively cutting dead weight, like that billion-dollar gene therapy, while doubling down on their massive winners.
That ruthless financial discipline is the key to their sky-high valuation. When you look at the analyst consensus in these reports, they are setting stock price targets for Lilly anywhere between $12,216 and $1,500 a share.
Wow.
Wall Street loves a company that isn't afraid to kill a darling project if the math doesn't make sense. They took a billion-dollar loss and redirected that capital straight into expanding manufacturing for the orforglipron pill in China. They are funneling money exactly into the areas where they have a monopoly and starving the projects that only offer marginal returns.
It is a masterclass in strategic focus. Let's recap the journey we've been on today. We started by unpacking Eli Lilly hitting that historic $1 trillion milestone, driven almost entirely by the unbelievable gravity-defying demand for Mounjaro and Zepbound. We looked at the absolute genius of the $50 Medicare price cap. Trading short-term per-unit margin for massive volume, establishing an impenetrable economic moat that starves competitors like Novo Nordisk and Viking Therapeutics of the oxygen they need to build factories.
It's a brilliant moat.
Then we explored the scientific leap from cold chain injections to the daily non-peptide oral pill and how Lilly weaponized their own lab data to force the FDA to shut down the compounding pharmacy pirates.
Yeah, shutting down the gray market.
And finally, we looked at how they are racing against the 2031 patent cliff by diversifying into complex Alzheimer's treatments and ruthlessly cutting underperforming billion-dollar pipeline drugs. The overarching takeaway from these sources is incredibly clear. Eli Lilly is currently succeeding because it operates as a de facto monopolist.
They truly are. They have completely transcended the traditional pharmaceutical business model. And, it leaves us with something quite profound to consider as we wrap up.
What's
Well, if a pharmaceutical company can now operate with the unchecked pricing power, the ecosystem lock-in, and the ruthless efficiency of a big tech giant, does society need to fundamentally rethink how we regulate and ultimately value the business of human health in the 21st century?
That is the trillion-dollar question, because that 150-year-old grandfather isn't just building a tech empire in the garage anymore. He owns the whole neighborhood and he's charging rent. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.